You just gotta change with the times or perish with them. Cause y'all said how to evolve. How does Luka Brazi always stay relevant? I change with the times, so I don't perish with them. I always reinvent myself. I went from K-Lucci to K-Luch, to Luch, to Luka, to Gooch, to Luka Brazi, to Zilla. LNS collection. Whatever I touch, it turns diamond. You know, God gave me a gift. You know, I think my gift was to really help other people in their lives. Cause I ain't get this life. All I did was help these motherfuckers that blew up and forgot about me. And promised me shit. Oh, yo, I'm gonna get you a house, I'm gonna get you a car, yeah, I'm here. And give me shit.
It's for my vlog. Fuck you talking about? Stop. No, go. He said he set the trend, right? He said he set the fucking trend, right? Stop playing with me. Big Gumbo's in the building. I set the trends. Bow. Remix. Yeah.
I've always had a head on my shoulders. I always had it figured out how to make a dollar. My grandmother, she was from Grand Projects. May Allah be pleased with her. She showed me how to sell a soda pop for $1 and I paid $0.25 for it from the market. I ain't never looked back. I had the house of spirit in me after that. That was it. I went and got a shopper car full of soda pops and sold them $1,000. This was Harlem week, the Jazz Mobile, you know, early 80s, late 90s, you know. They like, man, it's just a beautiful thing, man. Harlem Renaissance, you know.
We outside! I ain't got no prop money neither. Hold on. Oh, word? How you doing, bro? I love you. How you feel? Yeah, I get a back.
There are three capitals of the United States. Los Angeles is the capital of entertainment and media. Washington, D.C. is the political capital. And, well, New York is viewed as the financial capital of the United States. The Big Apple is really the epitome or the epicenter of America's obsession with making money and living the once vibrant idea and that of the American dream. While there are hustlers and entrepreneurs all around the country and all around the world, it can't be denied that New York City has been one of the major breeding grounds for some of the most successful hustlers in the world. And when it comes to this plant and its legalization, there hasn't been an exception. Luka Brazi, otherwise known as Karim Butler, grew up in the Bronx and hustled his way to where he is now. In this High Design QP episode, we're going to cover the rise of the Gumbo brands and the people behind it, and that of Karim Butler and his partner, Alex Major, while also discussing the recent announcement that the CEO of the cookies brand, Berner, has now entered into a partnership with the Gumbo brand. We're going to discuss that and the implications that the recently announced deal has on this new emerging market. Please make sure to hit the like button, share this, subscribe with the notifications turned on, and follow me on all the social medias. The links are down below in the description. Anyways, welcome to this QP. This is LMC. Let's run it. Luka Brazi, otherwise known as Karim Butler, grew up in the Bronx. His mom worked hard to have money to send him to private school, but Luka was really just focused on trying to stack bread. Luka, as a kid, had a love for hustling, working hard, and also acquiring top-shelf flowers. As a kid, he was always trying to get into the famous NYC spot ran by Branson. And every time Branson would tell little Luka he couldn't come in. And by the way, if you haven't seen the High Design History episode I did on Branson, I highly recommend you go watch that. But it's pretty wild to see that this same young boy that tried to cop from Branson is now a co-partner of his, given that they both have partnerships with Berner and the Cookies Brand. But more on that later. Around the year 2000, Luka would move over to Harlem and start hustling with a cousin of his on 145th and Broadway, where he'd be selling CDs, knockoff designer coats, and other products as well. During this time, he would actually be making a lot of good money. And a little later on, during this time in Harlem, he would link up with up-and-coming rappers at the time, Cameron and Jim Jones, who had just started to form the now world-famous rap group Dipset, otherwise known as the Diplomats. Over the course of a couple years, Luka would help Dipset in so many different ways, acting as the muscle for the set, while also providing promotion, as well as recruiting new up-and-coming rappers to join the group. See, Luka was known as someone who could really help the up-and-coming rappers from that area, because in a lot of ways, he had a lock on that 145th spot. I mean, check out this clip where he talks about it.
I got paid very well through Cameron. Remember, I found the J.R. Ryder, Hell Rail, Uncasa, Sheist, Bob, it can go on and on and on. Aguilar, I brought these people to influential to life. They were already who they were, but I was already lit. Remember, I was hot. Every rapper, everybody came to 145th and checked in with me. I was like the fucking mayor. Like the hood celebrity. You come through, you check in with Luka Brazi. Yo, Gooch, we going to see Gooch. I got Scarface, Lil Wayne, Juvenile. I had tour buses. Jay-Z and Beyonce come up there and kick it with me. Hold a conversation. 20,000 people just run up and crazy shit, bro. Real history.
Around the mid-2000s to early 2000s, Luka would start talking with rapper Sheist Bubz, who today now is the owner and partner with Berner in the clothing and accessories brand, The Smokers Club. But in the early to mid-2000s, Sheist Bubz and Luka would work together, and they actually helped build the Dipset subsidiary, Purple City Bird Gang. Now, what's really interesting about this time is that Sheist Bubz and Luka worked hand in hand to be one of the first people to really bring the purple haze to New York City.
Wall Street Nucleus era, where Redman used to go buy 100 bags. They was one of the first people to bring purple haze to New York City via Miami, from the way up Miami, and they called it Crippy back then. So I introduced the world to Purple Haze, Cameron days, Dipset, Purple Haze era, and here I am now with Gumbo.
Now, during this time, Luka and Sheist Bubz were talking about doing a collab album. Unfortunately, right when they were about to do the collab, Luka would end up getting arrested and had to do a bid for a little bit of time. And when he got out, Sheist Bubz and the other members of Purple City signed a deal with Baby Grand Records, and Luka would get none of the money, which then in turn caused some conflict. While it seems that there was some beef there, it looks like they have patched things up, and that is just a thing of the past. I think it's super dope to see how far Sheist Bubz and Luka have come, with Sheist reaching massive success with his podcast Heavy Smoke, as well as the success of the Smokers Club, and then now with Luka having so much success now with Gumbo and the Flytrap brand. Now, when Luka got out of prison, he promised himself that he was going to hustle and make money only from mostly legal endeavors. So he turned to fashion, selling custom fur coats to some of the biggest celebrities and rappers at the time, including 50 Cent, Chris Brown, French Montana, and many more. Luka had a partner in this fur coat business who unfortunately ended up getting locked up because of a situation involving some stolen coats, and we'll just leave it at that. Now, in 2017, Luka would meet his future wife and now business partner, Alex Major. Alex, just like Luka, is a real deal hustler, coming from New London, Connecticut. She started working at Def Jam Marketing at only the age of 18, working under Deirdre Graham and Julie Greenwald, which for those who aren't as tapped into the music business, well, those are very, very well-renowned music execs. Alex's adopted brother happens to be Jordan Reed, who played in the NFL and was a multiple-time Pro Bowler. And Alex has been working since she was 12 years old and also looked after Jordan and many of her cousins. So as we can see, Alex Major was very determined and driven at a young age. In 2017, Alex and Luka would meet and start dating, which would mark the start of a power couple that together would start to climb their way up the game. Now, in around the mid to late 2019, early 2020, Luka's friend Bully Brown would introduce him to a West Coast cat by the name of Young L.B. By the way, if you haven't watched the High Design episode I did on Runts and Young L.B., I highly recommend you go watch that. Seriously, it will give you a lot more context to the story we're about to talk about right now. So definitely go check that out. So it seems that Young L.B. has done his research and realized who Luka was and his history. Luka would start to give L.B. a tour of the different hoods in New York, and during that tour, L.B. would start to see how tapped in Luka was with the community. And Young L.B. told Luka that he should buy a stamp from him and jug his own jokes up flavor/brand. And given Luka's entrepreneurial instincts, bells started to ring in his head, and he realized this would be a great new endeavor to jump into. Now, there's a lot of power in the idea of what we as humans call exotic, right? Exotic is defined as something originating in or a characteristics of a distant, potentially foreign region. See, just like what Branson did back in the 80s and 90s with obtaining flavors and flowers from the West Coast, LB meeting Luka was in fact the same principle. Luka now had not only exotic flavors, but also, more importantly, he now had a stamp from, at the time, the most sought after and up and coming entrepreneur in this emerging industry, at least in terms of the national street recognition. See, in 2019, Runts, and the public leader of the Runts movement and that of N.O.R.E, was at the time at an all-time high in popularity and demand. In 2020, Leafly would award Runts the Flavor of the Year award, as well as Cookies and Berner would invest in the Runts brand. So the timing of Luka meeting LB and him getting a Jokes Up stamp was nearly almost perfect. Now, Luka has obviously been involved with this plant for many years, but I think really what happened with the rise of the gumbo flavor and brands is a combination between young LB giving Luka the blueprint/instructions initially to roll out the brand/flavor, combined with Luka's insane hustle. But also, I think one of the very critical components to this massive rise in success is Luka's network and ties to many of the top dogs in music and other businesses in New York. Many of the legendary rappers we know today, well, he had close ties to, given his days with Dipset, as well as the fact that his partner, Alex, worked at one of the most famous record labels of all time, in that of Def Jam. So it's really safe to say that, yeah, the Gumbo family, otherwise known as Luka and Alex, are extremely well connected. So now, because Luka now had the credibility with N.O.R.E's Jokes Up stamp and the newly formed Gumbo flavor/brand, he was able to utilize all of the connections he has in New York and beyond. The famous rap podcast Drink Champs, hosted by the legendary rapper N.O.R.E or Noriega and DJ EFN, is a great example of how a platform combined with a credible brand/product can shoot your business up to the top in record speed. When analyzing Luka's Instagram, we see countless pictures of him and famous rappers, but the most recurring is without a doubt him and Noriega. And it seems to me that Drink Champs and N.O.R.E are extremely supportive and loyal to the Gumbo brands. Luka and Alex are at many of the shows, given that Drink Champs has a kind of a live audience that really just consists of all of their close friends to the show. But this, my friends, is why podcasts are one of the most efficient ways to network with people. See, with a podcast, you're not only getting content, but it's also a mechanism to spend time and network with the guests that you have on your show. So it's a two birds, one stone type of thing. And with Luka and Alex being at the shows all the time, well, it only just helps add to their already impressive and vast network of famous individuals. Like, for example, Kevin Hart or Dave Chappelle. And really, once you build those relationships, well, potentially that could lead to full-on partnerships with said famous individuals. See, what Luka must have realized pretty early on when working with young LB is that he could just observe and learn what young LB was doing and then start doing it himself. See, imagine if you combine the strategies utilized by Berner and young LB. And to clarify for those who don't get where I'm heading with this, with Berner, he has a partnership sub-brand model with different celebrities, whereas young LB has done partnerships, like partnership sub-brands, with regular people all over the country, which really where the term stamp in this context comes from. Both approaches have been extremely effective, and if I had to guess, the stamp approach pioneered by young LB, J Pate, and others from the Jokes Up Runts crew most likely is a bigger moneymaker in the short term, whereas the celebrity collaborative brands are more of a slow burn, and really the ROI in that really is less guaranteed. Because a celebrity partnership is a trade in clout, right? The celebrity agrees to have their name associated with the business in exchange for their own branded products or their own sub-brand. And most likely they don't invest any of their own money in it. But that can depend on the situation, and that of the celebrities probably going to get a cut of the profits as well. Whereas the stamp approach, serving regular individuals, is a monetary trade, where the person buying the stamp could pay anywhere from $10,000 up to $100,000 or more. Typically what is offered in these stamp deals is the person gets to utilize the brand name and have it connected to their own personal brand, while also getting a blueprint of how to market and jug your sub-brand. Now, at this point, this business model of selling anyone their own sub-brand is pretty widespread, and people are doing it all over. And so these business models of selling anyone their sub-brand is pretty widespread. And now, because there are so many people doing this, the deals can vary, right? Some deals may get you unique genetics. Some deals might not. Some deals you may, get this or that, but really at the very core that all of these stamp deals have is that you get to utilize a prominent brand name to help bolster up your own sub-brand. Now, I want to be very, very clear about this, right? Is it worth it to buy a stamp or not? And really the answer is, it depends. The thing about buying a stamp is it really comes down to how far the person buying the stamp is willing to take it. How hard are you willing to work? How effectively are you going to leverage the overall brand name you bought the stamp from? Do you actually understand how much work it's going to take? Do you have a network that is optimized to help you succeed? Do you have an actual long-term plan? Have you taken into account what's going to happen when everything goes legal and is regulated, right? These are the questions that you need to be asking yourself before purchasing a stamp, in my opinion. See, we're in a very unique time right now because it's just started. This whole new industry, it's just started. So it's hard to see how many of these people that have purchased stamps have been successful and made money. I think there are plenty of cases where people have made some really good money. I'm sure there are cases where people haven't made any money though. But this is the short term. We're talking about the long term. Long term, well, the only way we're going to be able to see that is just wait. It's really only a time will tell kind of thing. I would say that Luka and Gumbo is by far the most successful stamp buyer in the country to date. I mean, they shot so far up, they ended up leaving the sub-brand status under Jokes Up and ascended to full brand status and now sells their own stamps. And like I said earlier, Luka and Alex were perfectly positioned in many ways to ascend above the Jokes Up sub-brand status. Given the fact that they have such a powerful network, and they both are hardcore hustlers that know how to work and network. They also tested the viability of the stamp sub-brand model with having their own Gumbo sub-brand and that of the Fly Trap Gumbo brand. The story goes that Luka and Alex were testing some new flavors with the legendary rapper Jadakiss, and Jada got so geeked, he called it a Fly Trap, and so that's the origin of the Fly Trap name. Now, if I had to make a recommendation, I think Luka and Alex should continue to build out the Fly Trap sub-brand and showcase the different strategies and methods in helping that sub-brand be successful, so that the folks buying stamps from them will have some more examples and instructions of how they can be successful with their own sub-brand. Maybe even create SOPs or standard operating procedures for marketing and other business operations. Anyways, like I said earlier, this stamp selling model is extremely new, which is also inside of a brand new industry. That's just starting, so we'll have to see how this all turns out in the future, but yeah, only time will tell. But please, if you buy a stamp, be very aware and understand what you're getting yourself into and have a plan to succeed. Anyways, I have to really commend Luka and Alex because really what they did that made them so successful is they adapted, observed, pivoted, and implemented in a pretty rapid amount of time. And in a lot of ways, that's entrepreneurship at its core. Now, in November 2022, which is last month as of this recording, Cookies and Gumbo released a press release announcing that Cookies and Gumbo were entering into an official partnership. Now, what are the exact details of this partnership? I'm not really sure, but if I had to guess, either Cookies made an investment or in the Gumbo brand, or they're doing some sort of distribution deal, and we'll have to see. I don't really know the details on the specifics of that. We'll probably find out here in the future. Now, why would Luka and his wife, co-founder Alex Major, want to do this? Well, by going into a partnership with Cookies and Berner, it guarantees that the Gumbo brand will have multi-state distribution in all of the cookie stores around the country. Another huge advantage that they're going to benefit from in this partnership is getting more access and developing the different flavors and genetics for their brand and their sub-brands. It's definitely going to be extremely interesting to see how the Gumbo and Cookies brand partnership will develop in the future. I personally think the future is looking very bright for the Gumbos. And really, when we think about why Berner and Cookies wanted to make this partnership happen, I think it really involves, Berner wanting to ensure that he has a solid infrastructure in establishing himself in New York with the Cookies brand, which is one of the biggest markets in the country. And as of this recording, the entire world. Yeah, New York is one of the big four markets in the US, right? There's California, New York, Florida, and Texas. These 4 markets are absolutely going to be extremely hyper-competitive given the concentrated populations and therefore bigger consumer markets. The thing about bringing a brand into a new market like New York is you need to have local movers and shakers on your side helping you out. State brands, in this case cookies, assimilate into the local cultures and overall zeitgeist of the local population. And what better way to do that than to partner with Luka Brazi's Gumbo brand, as well as partnering with the legacy operator in that of the legendary Branson. By the way, I mentioned this earlier, but if you haven't seen that high design history episode I did on Branson, I highly recommend you go and watch that. But anyways, like I said, the partnership and overall market entry strategy that Berner and the Cookies team has been executing on in New York has been really impressive to observe. It seems that it's a culmination of all the things the Cookies team learned when entering into other markets prior. They have really started to hone in on what worked for them and failed for them in entering into those other markets in the past. As each new state opens up, it looks like Cookies is just getting stronger and stronger when it comes to their strategy and their entry into new markets. I think Berner and his team have really been innovative in their marketing strategies for entering new markets, and a big part of that is how do you assimilate your brand into each unique local culture. And side note, I also think a company named TRP has been a big help with market entry for Cookies on more of the logistical side of things. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the full rollout and market entry for Cookies is going to pan out in New York. But so far, Cookies has been pitching almost a perfect game, and we're in the 6th inning. 3 more to go. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to observe. Now, to get back to the Gumbos, I think some of the major themes I've noted when researching and analyzing the Luka Brazi, Alex Major story, it really involves adaptation, persistence, resilience, and patience. See, like y'all saw earlier in the video, Luka is a real deal entrepreneurial hustler, someone who has sold all types of different products, adapting to new circumstances and being persistent in his endeavors. And I would say the same goes for Alex. See, really, what can be hard for so many people is getting back up after they've been knocked down multiple times. But that's the nature of success. You need to have resilience so you're able to get back up, brush your shoulders off, and then adapt and try to succeed a different way. For many, getting knocked down multiple times for many, many years pushes them to give up. But this is where patience and persistence comes into play. Success is rarely planned out to the T. Usually that success comes from unexpected areas. And see, what Alex and Luka have in common is their shared experience in helping rappers and musicians reach success, but continuously struggling to help themselves. And what I mean by that, in helping themselves, it comes down to investing in themselves and a product, a brand, an idea it represents. This is what entrepreneurship is, folks. And I'm talking about entrepreneurship that is looking for the long-term, generational wealth. Whereas most people work for a company and help build up that company, they may sometimes get some stock, some ownership, but really when the business becomes wildly successful and let's say it gets bought out for millions or even billions of dollars, more times than not, if you don't have any stock or ownership in it, you're going to make no money. And when it comes to the music business, I think this principle of ownership becomes much more apparent in your face. I mean, imagine seeing all of these rappers, your friends that you helped and worked with to help blow them up, made all of this money and got all this fame, while you get nothing. Seemed like that would sting and build up potential resentment or a big chip on your shoulder. Now, what Alex and Luka did, because they definitely do have those chips on their shoulder, is they used it as motivation to work harder, to refine their entrepreneurial muscles, and find a path to success. And that's what they did. You don't need to be a famous rapper to be successful. You don't need to be a professional basketball player. You can be the greatest thing of them all, an entrepreneur. Because at the end of the day, what are all of the rappers and pro sports players doing when they finish their careers? Well, a lot of them want to be entrepreneurs. Now, that is to say that being an entrepreneur is one of the hardest occupations in the world, so don't think it's not going to take a lot of work, but it's doable. But you need to believe in yourself, because just like Luka has talked about in interviews before, no one really is going to believe in you at first. Really, you're only going to have yourself to believe in. Please make sure to hit the like button, share this, subscribe, and follow me on all the socials. Big shouts out to Alex Major and Luka Brazi and all the Gumbos, and big shouts out to Berner and Cookies. big shouts out to you for watching. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this High Design QP episode. This is LMC, signing out.